All right. Well, we are super excited to be here for Saints and Sinners. Thank you so much for having us. My name is Lisa Marie Evans, and I'm the filmmaker and editor for In Her Words, 20th Century Lesbian Fiction. And I'm excited to introduce you to the rest of our team, Cheryl Pletcher and Marianne Martin. Cheryl, tell us about your role with In Her Words.
Well, as Lisa Marie said, we are so excited that you've asked us to be part of Saints and Sinners. So thank you so much for that. I have been basically the producer. I've been the person who's been finding the funds for us to continue our work on the film. And I've done the kind of back office paperwork and those kinds of things to keep the film running.
Cheryl runs the budget, and so that says it all right there. Marianne had to fight her for that job. Marianne, why don't you tell us about your expertise within Her Words, and then we'll share with everybody how the film got started.
Well, basically, I guess I was in charge of since we already had an outline of what we wanted to do with the film, taking it from an oral presentation into a film product. We had a good idea, but I was having to make some difficult choices as to who of our marvelous, wonderful pioneers, our literary pioneers, to include in the film. And with the limited amount of time, there were some tough decisions that had to be made. And I was also in charge of contacting the authors and hopefully getting them on board, which I was grateful that they were all excited and saw the need for this as much as I did.
And your expertise comes from, you're a publisher and an author.
Yeah, a lot of these people, a lot of these authors and their works were things that I grew up on. They were my heroines, my voice that I didn't have myself. And so it was exciting and nerve-wracking altogether to contact these people and say who I am. It just didn't seem like introducing to someone like an Anne Bannon, and although I had already met her, but introducing something that I thought was really important to somebody who was already so important, was kind of an interesting thing, but it all worked out really well.
Yeah. So just to step back a little bit, we have a documentary and we've finished the documentary. It's In Her Words, 20th Century Lesbian Fiction. And it covers the history of lesbian fiction in the 20th century, as well as the authors and what drove them to create the work and how it changed their lives, as well as the lives of Marianne and society at large. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how this film got started. What was the inspiration? We have a pretty, heartfelt story about how we all came together and how it started. So I'm going to let Cheryl start this part.
All right. So my wife, Sandra Moran, was a very, very close friend of Marianne K. Martin's. And Sandra was also an author. She was starting to write in 2010. And in, I think it was about 2014, if I've got that right, Marianne.
Yes.
Sandra and Marianne, and I'll let Marianne tell this story, but Sandra and Marianne got together because one of the classic authors had passed away suddenly. And so that generated the conversation. As I said, I'll let Marianne tell that part. But the main reason I'm telling this part is because we lost Sandra. Sandra was 46 years old, and we found out that she had very aggressive form of cancer in October of 15, and in early November of 15, 3.5 weeks later, she was gone at 46. So that is what the big driver was from my perspective to continue with the project, of which, Marianne will tell you how they started the film or how they started the project, and then we'll come back and I'll tell you how Marianne and I got connected.
Okay, so Marianne, you want to tell us a little bit about how you and Sandra started the project?
Yeah, I was asked in 2014 to do a presentation, a keynote presentation at the music festival in Wisconsin. And I was told I could do whatever I wanted. I could talk about whatever I wanted. And, you know, I thought I didn't want to talk necessarily about myself as much as I wanted to explore the whole pioneer in literature thing that had been bothering me for a while. Nancy Garden had just passed away, and it was sudden. Nobody expected it. She's the fabulous author of Annie on My Mind, which was groundbreaking for youth, young adult book. And I thought, if only I could have interviewed her and talked to her, put her on film of all that she had gone through, censorship and burning the books and all the stuff that went on. She was fighting media. She was, you know, fighting to keep it in schools and in libraries, even public libraries. So I thought that opportunity had been missed, and it bothered me a lot. And so I started thinking, well, I need to educate not just myself, but other people as to where we came from, who laid these landmarks for us, who pushed us forward and gave us voice. And so I started thinking about all the women authors, all the lesbian authors, and all the books that had been so important in my life. And I started thinking, I know somebody else that thinks the same way and had already done a little bit of thought and work on it. And so I contacted Sandra and I said, here's our opportunity. Would you do this with me? Would you get together? We'll put together a presentation outlining all of these fabulous books and authors. And she was like, let's get started right now, you know, and she was on board immediately. So we put together a presentation. We split up the decades, making those tough decisions, like in each decade, which book and author had, you know, made the biggest impact and on us and on our community. And so we made those decisions, put together our presentation, had a marvelous turnout, and had to stay afterwards after we did our presentation for like a half an hour answering questions because there were so many people interested in this. So that did it for us. We sat down in the lobby waiting for our chance to head to the airport, and we started making notes all over scrap paper and everything of listing those authors we definitely want to get on film as fast as we could, and putting priorities and trying to get contact people and all of that, sitting down in the lobby with all the musicians in the balconies above serenading us and everything. It was a marvelous experience, and it just jump-started us. And so once we got home, it was like, let's get to work and make this bigger, make this something, put it on film. And so that's where we were making contacts. We had our mission statement. We had the whole outline. We were going at it, and then Sandra got sick and we lost her. And at that point, I really thought this was way bigger than I could handle myself. And so there was some time that went by and I didn't know what to do. And I was in close contact with Cheryl. And finally, I just asked her. I just came out and said, Cheryl, would you consider helping me with this project? It was so important to me and Sandra. And she was like, on board immediately, but with the preference of, I don't know what I can bring to this project. And I thought, oh my God, you know, anything you can bring to this project would be wonderful. But it turned out that without her, this project would not have gone forward.
All right, so let's pick up from there. And Cheryl, you talk about what happened next.
Yeah, so yeah, as Marianne called me and I'm thinking to myself, gosh, you know, I'm a nonfiction reader, so I don't read a lot of fiction. And other than, of course, I read Sandra's books several times. But I thought, God, how can I help? Well, my background is business, so it worked out perfectly. And so then Marianne and I said, what do we do? This is great. We got this concept. We've got a way to find find funding. We'll work on that. And I would, somebody's got to actually, I don't know, film this thing. We better find somebody. And a very good friend of both of ours suggested a couple of names. And so we met with both Lisa Marie and another person to talk about, the fit and the willingness to work on the film. And it was like, bingo. There was nothing else to talk about. Lisa Marie Evans, we're on if you are, so that's how Lisa Marie came in. And that was in, I think, April of 2016 was the first month that the three of us, became partners. And we set up a little small LLC with the three of us just, to organize everything we needed to organize. And away we went. We did fundraising. I'll say I'm very proud of our team. We didn't make any move without funding first. So, that's another reason why the three of us started in 2016, and it's 5 years later when we're actually distributing the film. But there were times when we literally stopped, because we had to do more fundraising to be able to, pay for the balance of making the film. So, it's been a wonderful experience. And the other thing I will say is the authors, as Marianne said, I can't even believe these authors, they're so talented and so iconic. Every single one of these authors gave their time to us. They gave it to us. We asked and they said, you bet. And, when we were able to fund Lisa Marie going out to actually, meet them for interviews, we did it. But every single one of these authors were so kind to us and willing to be interviewed and be a part of the film.
Yes, let me talk a little bit about the filming of the authors. So this was really one of the first, it was probably the biggest project that I had done. It's definitely the biggest project that I've ever done. And so, I was like a one, for many of the shots, except the three of us were on the interviews often at the Golden Crown conference. And actually we filmed our first interview, which was Lee Lynch, probably within a few weeks after meeting and everybody getting on board for this. And that's when we all first met in the same room too. With Lee Lynch. So that was awesome. So yeah, a lot of the filming, the first interviews took place in hotel rooms, in my hotel room at the Golden Crown conference. And I would, set up the chair and try to I'd print out posters and kind of stage the interview and set up the lights in different areas of my hotel room to so you wouldn't know it was necessarily in a hotel room. And for me, it was, I feel like through this process, I went through grad school and this film was my thesis. So I had read two authors coming into this, and, I'm a self-taught filmmaker. And so a lot of my world was watching LGBT films and kind of learning from watching films. And so I really got schooled in lesbian fiction. And so I would read the authors, the book that we were focusing on, and then study up on them, and then interview them. And it was a lot. So yeah, Lee Lynch and Joel Gomez were our first two interviews that we did at Golden Crown, and they're both amazing. I mean, what a way to start this project. And a lot of times we would, we had the list that Sandra and Marianne had started with. And so we wanted to honor that. There's so many amazing trailblazing authors that it's really hard to choose from. And still we fit a lot in, a little over 90 minutes to film. And there's still many more. So there's lots of films to be made. It's hard decisions, but lots of films to be made on this. So I would pack up all the gear in like a suitcase and a little light kit. I had my camera, my computer, hard drives, mics, and then I would fly out to where the authors were, set up in their house, and film them from there. Anne Bannon was one of the first authors that we filmed, and she is just gracious and eloquent and beautiful and so intelligent. And she was very gracious with me because I was still learning. That was one of the first interviews, and I really didn't have this grasp of everything. And it was just one of the best experiences of my life, probably, is filming her and staying connected with her as well. Dorothy Allison was a hard one to get. I think she was going through some health issues before, but I was persistent, and she loved Sandra. And so those are the two things that really got us that interview. And I set up the lights in her kitchen, set up everything, and then we would send them. We had the same list of questions that we would send to each author beforehand so that they were prepared for that. And so Dorothy Allison had those questions, and I started the camera, asked her to describe herself a little bit, and then she went from there and did the entire interview. And so it was, she's a great storyteller as it is. I had to later in post-production had to fix a lot of the lighting issues, which so that was one thing with it. But she answered everything, and so professional and amazing. And I mean, she's Dorothy Allison, so that's awesome. Another great story is with Jennifer Levin. She lived like 3 flights up in New York, in Brooklyn, and one of our volunteers was helping me. She would drive me and Lauren Astro, and it was raining in New York, and I had my suitcase of lights, in my backpack with my camera, and we go up the 3 flights of stairs to her Brooklyn apartment, it was small. That apartment was small. And the first thing I did was like turn around and knock over a vase and break it. So that was my introduction to Jennifer Levin, who's awesome. And I wish with all these authors, it's like, we wish we didn't have to cut anything, because everything they say is extremely valuable. And we do plan to share that footage with archives as well. We went to many archives too. So so that's a little bit about some of the authors, the interview, flying around to different cities all over the US to interview these amazing authors. And then we also use Lillian Faderman as a narrator throughout the film. And so Lillian, I didn't even know who Lillian Faderman was coming into this. I didn't know. I'm going to be vulnerable here and honest. I didn't know who Rita Mae Brown was, and when we filmed her at her farm ranch in Virginia, obviously I knew who she was before we did that. But another reason why this film is so important, and Marianne, what did you call me during this process? I was
well, you were really our guinea pig, because you were our test case. If you were excited, then we could reach the generations of people that weren't familiar with all these works. And just seeing your reaction to each book and each author and each time you interviewed was just precious. You'd be coming back so excited, and we're like, yeah, we know that. Yeah, but that's good that you now know that. It was so cool.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons that I love documenting LGBT history. I've been doing that for over 20 years. And this is so important because I didn't know this. I often ask people, what was the first LGBT book that you read in grade school? Silence. Mm-hmm. Still, high school, silence. College, women's studies class. you know?
Right.
And so why is that? This should be told. And so these stories are invisible. They're not told. And so that's the passion behind this project, is to make sure that these authors are recognized, that our stories are told, because these were huge influences in people's lives, and still to this day.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. One more thing I wanted to say, Lisa, is a lot of the history that we grew up with was, um, I don't want to say it was invisible to the general public, and invisible in many ways to generations, because we had to keep it sort of under wraps. I mean, books were mailed to your house from Nyack in the beginning of their press and everything in brown paper wrappers. There was the international mailing and internal mailing as well in the United States, rulings that publishers had to be careful of, authors had to be careful of. And so a lot of this, the fights, the battles that people like Nancy Garden and Leslie and Newman, books that have been banned. And what was kind of interesting was, the more the banning of those books got out there in the public, the more sales they had. It was amazing. And yet they weren't accepted in programs, like you said, until they got to the college level. And, then it was like, well, okay, I guess you're old enough to read that now, kind of thing. Where a lot of these books didn't even have descriptive sex in them. And there was really nothing. In fact, the public, if you ask Anne Bannon, I think it was her second book, was the biggest seller, the second biggest seller in the United States overall, over all books, was her little lesbian book. And to think that just because some parts of society said this is off limits, we can't have it in our schools, we can't talk about it, blah, blah, blah. And suddenly you're seeing, well, no, they sell pretty well. So there was that push and pull for a long time. And now, of course, we have the whole problem with banning books. During the last 4 years, we had problems with, women like Hillary Clinton being taken out of textbooks in Texas. So are they going to try to totally erase us? I mean, this is going through authors and publishers' minds. Are we going to be erased? And so that's why this film is, to me, and I'm sure to you two too, is so important to get out there and get it accepted in colleges and high schools even, maybe. I mean, we'll see, but that's a good goal for us.
Yeah, and on that note, the film was inspired by the death of Nancy Garden and the need to document these stories and these authors. And we filmed we filmed Nancy Garden's widow, Sandy Scott. And I'm from Kansas City, and Annie on My Mind, and that there was a big lawsuit with that being banned from the Olathe School District, which was the high schools, which was when I was in high school in the 90s, and right in my backyard. So I was like on the edge of Olathe school districts in a Catholic school. And had I just think of how my life would have changed had I had access to Annie on My Mind. That's the struggle and just that knowledge and the education. And so it's just amazing, the perseverance of these authors too. And you're right, Marianne, it's like we have to know this history and this struggle so that we don't repeat it, that we know what it looks like, and that it's just so important to document our stories and the history of this. And we have lots of great interviews with the authors. You can check them out on our website, In Her Words, thefilm.com. And so right now I'm going to talk a little bit about the editing process, and that I go back to Lillian Faderman, and then we have a trailer that we'll show you here in a little bit. So like I said, it was, I really feel like I went through grad school, and it was a great education process. we're also going to have some like study guides to go with the film as well, so that people can kind of, you know, work through the process of understanding the books better and the history around that. So we decided to have, we were honored with Lillian Faderman to be our narrator. And, you know, I was reading a lot of books of all the authors, and then Lillian Faderman, I mean, her books are like this big each. And I read most of her books. I mean, she writes about everything. She's amazing. And so we all kind of had to look at where we wanted to focus on the history and the times as well. So as we go through, the film moves through each decade with the authors and some historical content around that. And it's really, it looks at LGBT history around that too. So it's a great education in that respect. And Lillian Faderman talks about that. You know, we can't fit everything in. Like I said, there's plenty of other films to be made. So it's a really good piece of history, all of it. And so there was a lot that I wasn't expecting that. It was just so much knowledge to ingest and then to figure out how we were going to put it out into, you know, 90 minutes. It's a little over 90 minutes. So Marianne was really integral in that part of really laying out the history and really how we were framing that. And then as an editor, I'm also an animator. So, you know, I would go into the interviews with one camera. And so, you know, if you watch a film for that long, you don't want to just be watching one person talking or different people talking for 90 minutes. So we, you know, would get creative with the historical content and some animation around that. And that, you know, editing all these authors, I mean, check out our website again for all the authors, and not even all of them are on the website because we have other authors who were deceased, you know, in the early 20s. So it's a lot of content and a lot of editing, and it was pretty overwhelming, to be honest with you. It was like go through every emotion in that process. And it's so nice to have a loving team. I mean, when we get off the phone with each other on our meetings, we say, I love you at the end. You know, I mean, how special is that? So it's been, you know, beautiful in so many regards of going through this process of learning, of documenting, of, you know, letting these authors know how important they are to us, and also building this relationship with each other. So, and then, you know, you go through different versions of the cut as well. And sometimes I'm sure with authors as well, you can go down a rabbit hole if you decide to go back and edit something, went down that rabbit hole. And it was well worth it, right? We brought on Chris Avery, who does the music, and it really added another level to the film, and it was totally worth it. And so that's really exciting. So we have the editing, the music, and the authors, a little bit about those. Let's see, anything else we have before we're gonna show the trailer? Okay, I think this is, yeah, Cheryl.
I had just one thing to say before we show the trailer, and that is to say that Lisa Marie Evans, I'm not going to say if, when you fall in love with this film, because you will, she has done it all. She mentions it as she just did, but I mean, this entire film went from the filming of the interviews, the editing, the color corrections, outsourcing our sound and working hand in hand with Chris on the sound. I mean, this Marianne and I wouldn't have a film. We'd have a concept. Had it not been for what Lisa Marie Evans did for us. So it's a fabulous film, and she, outside of the content, the outline, and the funding to make it happen, this is her film, truly.
See, don't you feel the love in this room? So let me explain the trailer a little bit before we show you that. So the trailer was done pretty much at the beginning of the project. So all the authors that you see in the trailer are the only authors that we had filmed at that time. And the trailer is still great. It stands on its own. So we're going to show you the trailer, and then we're going to come back and talk a little bit about what our distribution process looks like at this point.
She walked up the subway steps, pulling the comb from her back pocket. The cigar shop on the corner was still open, selling Sunday papers. And she used its window to take the point out of her DA and to dismantle her pompadour. She whistled Brenda Lee's "I'm Sorry" softly as she wound small spit curls in front of her ears. I didn't understand what my difference was. About junior high, the boys started calling me Butch.
I was obviously queer. I was one of the only Jewish kids growing up in a town that was very WASP. I was a very lonely kid.
I had 2 little kids and a husband. And there's so many women in my generation who did likewise.
I fell into books like you fall into a river. I would just disappear into them. It was the place I could hide. And literally, I would hide. You could read stories about working class people and poor people, and they were always kind of maudlin. They were good, inherently good. We weren't. And I knew this. We were violent, angry, addicted to liquor and drugs and bad behavior.
The Black Arts movement was very influential for me. You didn't go to any kind of rally or march without a poet or a singer kicking things off.
I remember being a sophomore in college and hearing about the first consciousness-raising meeting and the first, baby gatherings of lesbians and feminists. It was like the world began to crack open.
At 15, my best friend and I fell in love. While the adults went to the bars, the kids went to the ice cream parlor, that sort of thing. That's also where we found our first lesbian pulps.
You could take a book home, and under the covers at night with a flashlight or something, you could enter a world. It was scary. It was not a friendly time. You could lose your children. You could lose your job. Your friends would turn against you. The sense that you were sick, the sense that there was no hope, unless you lived with a facade of a normal life, the sense that you were a menace to little children, you were a child abuser just by living.
When I was coming up, it was illegal to be queer and to practice homosexual sex. You can never take it for granted that it might well go back to that again.
We were trying to tell stories of people in love. We were being sabotaged by the post office because this stuff was going through the mail. And they didn't want happy endings because otherwise Congress would be on their case.
There has never been a separation in my life between my identity, not just as a lesbian, but as a particularly difficult, provocative, angry, working class lesbian. I wanted to find the stories that were about my people and give me some sense of purpose and meaning and some way to fight the shame.
We were sort of writing the Cook's tour of what we knew. We didn't know that much ourselves, but about what was beginning to become the gay and lesbian movement.
In order to change the world, you have to first change your dreams. And to me, writing speculative fiction, those are my dreams. The acquisitions editor said, your character is Black, a lesbian, and a vampire. That's too confusing. And I'm thinking, who do you think your market is going to be? Like 2-year-olds?
I was working on stories that were frankly openly lesbian stories. They had lesbian sex in them. They were butch femme. Several agents rejected the book. They said, well, we're uncomfortable with the sexuality. We don't quite understand the sexuality. It's lesbian sexuality, you know, what's not to understand?
It was a long, hard road. And here we are, and we're still on the journey.
But it's a little bit helpful to know that someone started beating the ground down for you. She maintained a slow pace, moving south, then west to the edge of the city, enjoying the evening air and the memory of the girl's soft, pale skin. Her resurgent dreams cast a new glow on Gilda's life. In giving dreams, she had recaptured her own.
All right. So now that you've seen the trailer, we are going to talk, actually we'll let Cheryl speak a little bit about what our distribution process looks like and where we've kind of gone with that. I will say that, you know, after we edited this film, we're really excited to show it and to put it out in the world. You know, right when we finished it, we got into a pandemic and then the elections. And then I got a full-time job where I was producing and editing a 20-minute episode weekly. And so I just finished that first season, and today's my first day of vacation. And so we're excited to move forward with the film, and so we can get it out to the people, to you. And so Cheryl, let's talk a little bit about where we are with that.
You bet. So as Lisa Marie said, you know, the film is for the most part done. Lisa Marie's got just a few minor, I would call them minor. She's probably going, not minor. A few minor things to do, but we are really very, very close to distribution. So Sandra was not just an author. In fact, I would call Sandra primarily an educator. She was a professor at the Johnson County Community College in Kansas City. And so that was her primary job. And then she was also an author. So education was really, really important to her. And that's where, as Marianne said, you know, the primary focus, Marianne and Sandra's primary focus was getting this out into, you know, the educational segment to make sure that universities, as Marianne said, with hope, some high schools might reach in for this content. But so that's been our focus, is to try to find the best distributor for us from educational purposes. But also, as Lisa Marie said, the pandemic held us up. We had originally planned to do distributions of the educational segment and then follow that with a more broader distribution. So now what we're in the process right now of looking at distributor options for us that would do both. So by the end of 2021, I think it's fair to say that we will have the film in distribution in the educational segment, as well as, you know, some broader options beyond that for people like, you know, regular folks who want to just see the film. So that's where we are right now with distribution.
Yeah, and we're excited to share it with you. And on our website, inherwordsthefilm.com, we have a place for a newsletter. So to stay in touch and up to date with events and distribution and all that good stuff, go to the website and sign up for the newsletter. And we promise we'll be putting a newsletter out soon. You know, now that I'm on vacation, I got some time to do that. And connect with us on social media. You know, we're trying to, as I'm sure many of you watching this have many things going on and spending your energy getting the word out. And, you know, it's just, I think I can say it for all of us that we're just so excited to share this and, you know, get it out into the world and connect the authors with everybody as well. So in closing, is there anything either of you would like to add?
Just a thank you to Saints and Sinners and Paul and all his wonderful staff and volunteers. They're just fantastic. They put on a festival every year that I'm in awe of. I don't know how they ever get it done, but they do. And we are really honored to be a part of it this year, especially since with the pandemic and everything, it's been really hard. So we appreciate that inclusion and being able to get the word out. So thank you, Paul, and everyone.
And I echo those remarks, and thank you so much, Saints and Sinners, for being willing to, highlight our film, and we very much appreciate it. And just to repeat our website, inherwordsthefilm.com.
Thank you very much for having us, and we look forward to connecting with everybody. Thank you.